Today is an exciting day. It's me, Multiplier, to show you something fantastic I made. But first of all, let's provide some context. So, Serum, you've all heard of it, you all know it. It's the best synthesizer in the world, the best software synthesizer in a computer. And there's this thing in it called the noise oscillator. You can click it like that, turn it on. Now, the noise oscillator, we are recording, great. So the noise oscillator itself is basically a sampler. It plays samples. Now, by default, you get a whole bunch of samples. You get stuff like these organics, the sound of an air can, a paper bag, a shush noise, you get some kick attacks and so on. Basically, some samples, or you see some white noises too. However, the wizard that is Steve Duda, the guy who made this thing, decided, wouldn't it be cool if you could put your own samples in here? So you could take, say, a bass sound or a lead or a pad or anything at all, even a drum sound, and put your own sample on top, possibly even modulating pitch level, and just basically getting your sample moving with the preset. So you can, of course, modulate all these parameters, all these controls. Now, so what I did, where's it gone? Here it is, Multiplier Serum Noises. So I basically went through all my sample packs and picked 600 of what I think are the best things to use in the noise oscillator. So typically textures, transients, and top layers. So you can see, for example, there's I'll show you these in a sec. Some vocals top layers, some crashes, crazy detailed top layers. You got some drum layering noises, some kick transients, it's all kinds of craziness. It's so crazy and so amazing. I can't even string a sentence together sometimes. Some of them are labeled better than others, as you can see here. I mean, this is just a bunch of miscellaneous sample sounds. It's brilliant. So 600 top layers, transients, and textures that you can layer on top of your sounds. Sounds such as these. And many more. I'll show you more in a sec. So now the noise oscillator itself, it's worth knowing what the buttons do. So what I'll do is click. Okay, now I can trigger it. So what I've done so far is simply, are we even recording the audio? Oh, we are recording the audio. That's fantastic. I've clearly got the memory of a goldfish. Okay, so what we've done so far is simply turn off the main noise. So let's go back to the beginning. Initialize the preset. Really loud. Okay, so that is just the oscillator. We can turn that off. No noise at all because there's no oscillators. Oscillators are the initial thing generating the sound. So what we could do is turn on the noise oscillator. It's called the noise oscillator, but you can think of it as the noise player, the sampler, if you like. So as I said, there are plenty of default noises. So you can take, say, this pink noise here that comes as standard. Pink noise, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now, what we could do instead is maybe find a multiplier noise, one of Multiplier's Serum noise layers, link below. Alien getting a haircut. Oh, I'd be mad not alien giving birth, but we'll go for alien getting a haircut. So now if I press a button, it sounds like an alien getting a haircut, which I think is brilliant. So as you can see here, I turned up the level. That's quite critical. I think by default it starts quite low. Yeah, so you need to turn that up. So important buttons here. So this button is maybe the most important. It is the one-shot button. By default, the sample will loop through. In fact, best demonstrated with a transient or anything just quite short. So maybe should we the alien maybe? I like this one. So this is one of the breathy vocal one-shots. It's kind of like a breathy thing with a vocal vibe. Really, really cool stuff. So notice how by default, with that button not selected, so by default, as I hold it, it loops through. It's basically just playing the sample over and over again. Whereas if I hit the one-shot button, just plays it through once, hence one shot. The other important button to know, or in fact, one of the other important ones to know, is this key tracking button, the keyboard button. So notice now, in fact, yeah, we'll let it loop through. So we'll turn, so by default, with the keyboard button off, actually on, no matter what button I press on the keyboard, it comes out at the default speed. So it just plays the sample through. Whereas if I hit the keyboard button, like so, it basically works like a normal sampler, where if you go lower on the keyboard, it plays it slower and therefore lower in pitch. Whereas if you go higher on the keyboard, it plays it, as you go higher on the keyboard, it plays it faster and therefore higher in pitch. So you can basically have it pitch up and down Or if you say want to lock in the pitch, you can just turn off the keyboard button and play with the pitch control. In fact, you can use the both, but it just changes the pitch. You know how pitch works. It's easy. And I suppose for some of the there are some long samples in here, some really long ones, which are super cool. For the really long ones, you may want to play with this phase. The phase is the start position. They should really call it start position. Phase refers to a synthesis concept, but this is, I mean, it's more of a sample. It is a sampler, so they should really say start position. But it's taken spirit from the synthesize a bit. So if I had a long one, let's see if I can pick out a long one. That's what she said. Stream in a forest. I'm going to go for that one. Click. So this stream in a forest. Ooh, beautiful. What a beautiful sound. Now I thought maybe this might evolve more. I was maybe thinking of a different sample, but that's okay. I'll choose a different one. So if the sample was different, I mean, there's no point. I could start it halfway through because it is a long sample, but in this case, there's no point. So I'm going to choose, that was a nice sound, that wasn't it? This one. That one. See? Some natural ambience, some Foley if you like. So if say I wanted to start at a particular position, you can use the phase to move through it. So if you have one of these, I mean, some of these are short, some of them are really long. Obviously, it's a whole range of 600 samples. So if it's a long sample and it varies from beginning to end, you can use phase to choose a particular position. Now, shall I show you some in context? For example, here's a sound I made, which can be enhanced with some subtle texture. See how this is probably the most common use, in fact. It's subtle, just provides that additional subtle texture in the background. So notice before, just a normal noise. And with texture. It's subtle, but makes a big difference. Let me show you the texture by itself. So it's this one of the ones from the Serum noises, and in particular, notice how I've assigned LFO1 here, this modulation shape, the defining modulation shape, to the noise level. Whereas if I didn't do that, just sort of goes through once. Now it's been routed through the filter. You can see here the end down here, that's useful to know too. But it's worth noting, yes, you do, generally speaking, if you do have a defining modulation, try and get the noise to move with it. So it sounds like the noise is a part of the sound and not this bolted on layer. Like when you hear this in a track, in fact, you're probably not even hearing the noise or the texture. You're probably just hearing the cool, like the oscillator bit. The texture is just filling out the mix and providing that additional stuff happening. It sounds like it's moving with the main sound. Notice I also have key tracking turned on. I mean, it's kind of subtle down here. So, I mean, in this case, it's quite subtle, but it means that the sound is subtly changing from note to note. So again, if you're playing a bit of a melody, it sounds like the noise is a part of the sound and not this arbitrary bolted on layer. And then of course, words today. And then of course you can, I mean, because it's loaded up as a bank here of samples, noises. You can just keep hitting right and then just keep trying it, pressing buttons until you like the sound of the one you want. Anyway, do get creative with this. That's the whole point. It's not just a case of adding in, I mean, texture definitely is the most common. So the main uses for this, I'm going to take my headphones off. The main three uses for the noise oscillator, if I get entangled, the main three uses for this noise oscillator is texture, transients, and then just getting creative and using it as a sampler, basically. So in this case, it was using it as texture, just a texture layer you don't consciously hear, but just enhances the sound. You could also use a transient, such as a kick transient or just some sort of thing to define the start of the note. So if you have a lead or a bass and you find the front's not well defined, you add a bit of a transient on there. I mean, you can see there are plenty of transients in here. I mean, there's even some cool transients. I think, there you go, see, look at all these transients, and there's more too. But yes, you basically add that in at the front of your bass or at the front of your lead, and it's like defines the start of it. So when you're hearing it in a track, You know that the note started and then your ears are drawn to it. So if you're playing a melody and you can't hear the melody very well, add a transient at the start. It helps define the start of each so your brain can understand it better. That would be the second main common use. Then the third way is just pure, just you find a cool sound, like the alien ones, for example, and then you basically just manipulate it. Jet airplane, fine, but we'll ignore that. It's just, you know, the airplane's distracting me anyway. So yes, the third example is basically just using it as a sampler. If you dig through, I mean, I won't show you now, but if you dig through, I can probably show you now. There you go, here's an example, sound effects presets I made. You can see that some of them just purely use the noise oscillator as a sampler. So like here, for example, it's deep rumble ambience. The specifics aren't important, but you can see there are no oscillators in this preset, just this noise oscillator. We can see here that there's no oscillators, it's just a noise oscillator. And then yes, it is going through this reverb filter, which is cool, but it's basically just using Serum as a more interesting sampler, if you like, or a sampler with a different set of features, because you can do things like modulate pitch in a much easier way with Serum than you can in a sampler, because you can, of course, just draw in your own modulation shapes and all that fun stuff. Not to mention you get all the filters. So if you want to take just a cool sound and then run it through maybe even a modulated filter in Serum, that's better and easier than using a sampler and then Serum effects. So yes, the third way is basically just using it as a sampler and turning off the oscillators entirely. There you go, here's another example. I have no oscillators in this effects preset, just a noise oscillator. Going through this comb filter, which in fact with the resonance is, it says don't touch that one, and that actually turns up the resonance of the comb filter, so it looks mad. So yes, you can see that it looks like this is on, but it's actually just a glitch in the UI there. But yes, the third way is just to take a cool sound by itself in the noise oscillator and manipulate it using pitch and the modulation sources, or even just the amplitude and the modulation sources, and also the Serum effects, and probably more importantly, the Serum filters. So yes, that is Serum Noises, a pack on my website, as you can see here, link below. It's fantastic. It's the best. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's these sorts of, they're unique textures, transients, and top layers that allow you to make more interesting sounds. It's fantastic. It's a way of making really unique sounds, either subtly or not so subtly. And for example, these noises. My name is Multiplier. Fantastic bingo banger bongo. Link below, of course, to Serum Noises on my website. I will catch you guys on the blippity flip.